This is the town of Trowbridge, sitting in the River Avon on the southwest of England, seen here in 1911. It is a town with a brutal history which became synonymous with the macabre profession of grave robbing during the 1860s and again in the early 1900s. It was in pursuit of grave robbing that one of Trowbridge's best-known citizens, Old Man Russell, was brutally murdered and dismembered by his employee, Bartleby Pumpkin. On October 32nd, 1911, police were alerted by a group of trick-or-treaters that they had heard a loud scream from Bartleby Pumpkin's rented accommodation at around 1 a.m. 2 officers arrived at 4 a.m, and after a quick search of the house, nothing suspicious was found. The landlady and other boarder were absent, so the officers relaxed and chatted of familiar things. However, Bartleby became more and more agitated until he was reported to shriek the following:
"Villains! Dissemble no more! I admit the deed! Tear up the planks! Here! Here! It is the beating of its hideous hearts!"
Beneath 3 floorboards was the dismembered corpse of Old Man Russell. Due to the prominence in society of Old Man Russell, his murder made national headlines. With no prior convictions to his name, Bartleby Pumpkin confessed and was found guilty of the murder. He was placed in Crowland Lunatic Asylum under the care of prominent phrenologist Dr. Sid Stanley. But what made Bartleby Pumpkin, a man with no history of violence, turn so viciously on Old Man Russell? Little is known of Bartleby Pumpkin's past before 1901. In the census of that year, Bartleby was a digger working on the 2-penny tube. However, in the 1911 census, he was officially registered as a gravedigger under the employ of one Old Man Russell, boarding with another tenant in a deaf retired widow's house. A job advertisement was placed for an honest wage as a gravedigger in 1907. The medical scene at the time presented many chances for gravediggers to move into grave robbery. The early 1900s saw a resurgence in phrenology practices in the treatment of diseases of the brain, with Dr. Sid Stanley at the cutting edge of his research. After a lull at the end of the previous century, the aforementioned rise of phrenology had once again led for a substantial rise in the need for cadavers.
Before the Anatomy Act of 1832, the only legal supply of corpses for anatomy were those condemned to death by the courts. This did not provide enough subjects for the medical schools. In the 19th century, only 55 people a year were sentenced to the capital punishment. With the expansion of the medical schools, as many as 500 cadavers were needed annually.
At that time, the grave robbing trade was a sufficiently lucrative business to run the risk of detection, particularly as the authorities tended to ignore what they considered a necessary evil. Shopping lists of cadavers and body parts were provided to the grave robbers by doctors. Grave robbers and doctors would meet in the remote places of Trowbridge to trade body parts and cadavers for large amounts of money. Whilst Bartleby carried out the grave digging, grave robbing and the trading of corpses, his employer, Old Man Russell, took a large cut of the profits and lived a life befitting a respected member of society, enjoying leisurely pursuits with his lady wife. Was this enough to cause resentment in Bartleby? If his diary is to be believed, however, at that point he had no ill feelings towards Old Man Russell.
I loved the old man. He had never wronged me. He had never given me insult. For his gold I had no desire.
Due to his own popularity, a post-mortem photograph was commissioned by the mayor of Trowbridge to commemorate Old Man Russell. Named 1 Graham Russell at birth, he was orphaned at a young age and then employed to work the tills for one of Trowbridge's most notorious residents, Phoebus Unger the rat-catcher. The rat-catcher was known to hunt and cook orphans and sell them in his meat shop. This practice was accepted, however, due to the low cost of orphan meat compared to beef. At 19 years old, he enlisted in the British Army.
So in 1911, a silent film was released called Hero of the Transvaal. Until 1915's Birth of a Nation, this was the most successful film of all time in the United States, and it's actually based on Old Man Russell's massive heroics in the Second Boer War. The film was then followed by the hugely successful musical theatre production in 1951. What a lot of people don't know, because it's omitted from both the film and the musical, is that Old Man Russell lost an eye in combat. It was replaced with a vulture eye, like a glass fake eye, but he actually wore that for the rest of his life.
With a new vulture eye fitted and his status secured as a war hero, he bought the site of the old Bottleberry orphanage on the outskirts of Trowbridge, renovated it, and was able to become quite the entrepreneur. Taking advantage of the surge in demand for cadavers, he began his grave digging and grave robbing business, which led to his ill-fated meeting with Bartleby Pumpkin.
Bartleby Pumpkin was not a skilled killer or murderer with any expertise. The coroner's report into Old Man Russell's murder shows that there were traces of scorpion poison in his blood. However, the cause of death was a large stab wound from a serrated knife, the kind of knife you would find in any kitchen. So I think that though the murder was premeditated, it was bungled. There was a half-empty bottle of scorpion poison in the larder, which would not be enough to kill a man. It's my belief that Bartleby panicked, grabbed a knife and killed Old Man Russell. He was careful enough to dismember and hide the body and clean the bloodstains, but the screams were still heard.
Perhaps the most compelling explanation for the motives comes from Dr. Sid Stanley's transcripts into the case, made in 1913. The halls of Crowland Lunatic Asylum closed in 1917. However, records of a transcript between Dr. Sid Stanley and Bartleby Pumpkin have been made open to the public.
I would like you to tell me, in your own words, what happened that night, October the 32nd.
Hearken, and observe how healthily, how calmly I can tell you the whole story.
You have said before that you heard a sound before you murdered him.
It was low, dull, quick sound, much such a sound as a watch makes when enveloped in cotton.
Coroner's report found poison in his blood, but this approach to kill him failed. So you stabbed him?
Just once, only once.
What did you do with the body?
First of all, I dismembered the corpse. I cut off the head, the arms, and the legs. I then took up 3 planks from the flooring of the chamber and deposited all between the scantlings.
After the officers entered your premises, what moved you to guilt and to confess the murder?
My head ached, and I fancied a ringing in my ears. The ringing became more distinct, until at length I found that the noise was not within my ears.
The officers have confirmed that they heard nothing peculiar.
No, they heard, they suspected, they knew, they were making a mockery of my horror.
This is the sound you claimed was the beating of his hideous heart, the same sound you heard before you murdered him. But why did you murder him?
He had the eye of a vulture. Whenever it fell upon me, my blood ran cold, and so gradually I made up my mind to take the life of the old man, and thus rid myself of the eye forever.
Perhaps the true motivation behind Bartleby's decision to brutally murder and dismember Old Man Russell will never be known. Was it simply financial jealousy, guilt about grave robbing, a disease of the brain? Or was it a case that he possessed an irrational disgust of Old Man Russell's vulture eye? Whatever it was that drove Bartleby to kill his employer, the case remains one of the most disturbing in Trowbridge's brutal history, and perhaps one that will never be fully understood.